I
Is
have
that
no
the hill
problem.
you want to die on?
Is that,
Like,
is that your hill? Is that your
just
hill?
curious.
So
Yeah.
I guess like Vasquez, I want to bring it back to you. And think about also like so you talked about the bro code, we talked a little bit about like toxic masculinity in men and like socialization in men. And then I also kind of want to hear about what masculinity is for you and what it can be versus like what we see it as. Or what versus what it's like coming. You know what I'm saying? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think I never really think about my actions as being masculine.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I don't ever think about like I think nowadays people like to point out when I'm being feminine. It used to be
Interesting.
which is a flip-flop, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before they used to point out when I was being masculine, now they're pointing out when I'm being feminine. And it's I had one guy actually tell me, um, you're very effeminate. And I said, well, I lived as a woman for 35 years.
Mm-hmm.
The fuck? Like,
I feel
okay.
like folks who are listening to this as a podcast are missing your facial
Right. Right.
cues, which are like chef's kiss.
80% of the message.
80% of this, yeah. The fuck for real.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it's there's I don't know. Like for me, I never like I said, I when I think about ma masculine, I think clothes. You know what I mean? I think that's the only real and it's even like even then like it doesn't really necessarily have any gender. It's really the way that it's set up in the store.
In
You
people's
know,
Right.
minds. Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
what I mean? I don't really think about my masculinity all that much in that
Me?
perspective.
Oh, I kind of
Maybe
wonder. Go ahead.
go ahead. You kind of wonder maybe that's me being masculine.
No, I don't. No, that's not what I was gonna say. I was gonna say like I wonder if that's kind of how it should be, right?
Oh
In which
yeah.
like like in which like I don't necessarily think about my femininity.
Yeah. Same.
And I think about projecting masculinity, but like that's also about aesthetics, right? Or like what I'm wearing. And not about how I am.
Mm.
If that
Yeah,
makes
I
sense.
think maybe at some point I was preoccupied with this idea, but it had more to do with safety than it did have
Yeah.
anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
now that I'm quote unquote, I would say not passing, appearing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, Now that I'm cis appearing, it's not something that I have to think about necessarily. It's one of those privileges that I get,
Yeah.
um, which is why I think I'm so vocal about being a person of trans experiences because we come in all shapes and sizes and we exist everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, like we'd have to do a podcast number two for my definition of masculinity. I
I
wasn't
mean,
ready for that question.
I know. Listen, I don't know if you've noticed so far, but I tend to ask very big and deep questions sometimes, so I have to
Yeah.
back it up. Gotta back it on up.
Yeah.
Um,
No, but that was a good one.
That
yeah,
was very much so.
Ina, did you have something you wanted to?
No, I think I just wanted to say that so glad that you pointed out too that you feel like that is a privilege that you have because I know that
Yeah.
for a lot of people of trans experience, they probably think about that quite a bit because of the safety component and in the workplace or just in society, always having maybe this looming concern of being found out or how people will respond. And so that's a very real experience for a lot of people that needs to be named.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this also connects to kind of like what we mentioned earlier about sometimes you don't always want to be the person to like have to say something when like dudes are being duty.
Yeah.
Um, and I also feel like there's you know, you had mentioned in previous conversations that I would kind of want to bring back like this tax to pay for being
Mm.
for being like mask passing. So can
Right.
you like tell us a little bit about that?
Um, yeah, like I feel as though I think it's, and this is something that I think a lot of, not a lot. I know that there are some people in community that believe that they don't have any responsibility to kind of shoulder the burden, when it comes to when people are being shitty or people, like, and I agree, I shouldn't have to always stand up for people,
Mm-hmm.
but I do think that there is a kind of a tax that I have to pay for coming off, or for the privilege of being stealth, not on purpose.
Yeah.
Um, and it's that when there is something being said that I find to be unjust, incorrect, hazardous, or damaging to community in general, that I do have a right to, but a responsibility to say something about that, and do something about that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, but I think that has more to do with my upbringing, kind of like, my parents being, ministers, and kind of feeling the need to I owe community something,
Mhm.
right?
Mm.
Because I exist, I owe community something.
Mm.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of shit to say about the church and the ways in which it uh has fucked some of us up.
Mm-hmm.
Or has fucked up the thing itself. But I think you know, just like
Right.
just fucked it. But I do think that there's something about the focus on community that is really necessary and
Oh
also
yeah.
very helpful,
Oh yes. For
Yeah.
sure.
right? Like we all should have this like feel like we have this responsibility to community, like we have this responsibility for like stepping in for folks who may not be in the room with us when something derogatory or harmful, or I like that list that you gave of like you know, unjust or harmful or like otherwise hazardous, right? Like to
Mm-hmm.
somebody else, that like if you're in the room, like you can stand for them.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to be the person in the room that's like,
Yeah.
that is the one that's saying, well, actually, that's not their pronouns. You
Mm.
know, actually, I think it's A, B, C, and D. Or on the flip side, if someone says, actually, that's not their pronouns, my response should be, oh, my bad, I didn't know. Yes, please always correct me, right? Because we're creating space for that to happen again,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
or being like, oh, what are their pronouns? Boom, got you,
Mm-hmm.
corrected,
Right.
So there's a responsibility in so many ways for us to, so many ways that we can make, where we can take away the othering,
Right.
Oh,
you know, there's
yeah.
something there.
There is something there for sure. And um I just really like how you put that. Like we have a responsibility in a lot of ways to take away the othering and to like bring their humanity back into the space where people may have forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's about humanity.
Mhm.
Speaking of, I was speaking to one of my people who happens to identify as a lesbian. Um, and I was kind of complaining about the fact that there isn't a space, like my space is gone now. Like now that I'm cis appearing, when I enter a room, I change the energy in the room, right? If
Yep.
it's a group of women, they immediately change the energy in the room. If
Mm-hmm.
I'm entering into these spaces where I used to be able to exist as lesbian spaces, I immediately change the energy in the room, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, you know, and and her response was kind of like, all right, tough. you know,
Mm.
tough for you, sorry for you, not sorry. Kind of, she's like, we know there you have to respect the fact that there's spaces that are not for you anymore.
Mm.
And that there are spaces that are that site that when you enter you make unsafe because of the way you appear.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I said, well, that's interesting for me because I also don't feel like I belong with cis men because I feel like they make me unsafe.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Sorry, this is like the man or the bear dialogue.
You know, and it had never occurred to her that I also could feel unsafe amongst cisgendered men.
And that like just because you pass doesn't mean that you're safe. Like it
Right.
allows you a certain kind of safety, but I also feel like, I mean, honestly, I feel like this when I'm around like other Black women sometimes, where um as long as I shut up, I can pass,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I have to bring only like certain areas of myself in order to be perceived in a certain way, in order to be overlooked in a certain way, in order to like blend in, right? But like to show up holistically is to risk being othered.
Right. You can fit, but you can't belong.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh,
Mm-hmm.
yikes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, which speaks to the complexities of this because it is about like as much as it shouldn't be, but it is like it comes back to something as surface level as the aesthetics because that is what people read as being like that sense of who you are and that identity and that danger that is assigned to now presenting as a cis man.
I tried to walk to from the gym the other day. Good Lord. Listen, here is a general PSA to
Oh Lord.
people who are afraid of other people walking behind them. Walk faster. Just walk faster, cross the street. I had to cross the street 3 times because these women thought I was stalking them. I was like, no, we just need the same road. And I understand. It's so painful because I vehemently understand the
Yeah, you
fear
get
of
it.
having someone like, yeah, I've been
Get it.
there.
Yep.
I have been there. But girl, I need to get to the place too.
Yeah. Okay, so I saw a video of like it was a gay like a gay man and he had on like makeup and kind of a cute outfit, but he was like taking a video at night and a girl walks by and he's like, "Oh, I like your outfit." And then she immediately responds with, "I have a boyfriend." And then he was like, "Oh, excuse me. Hey girl, I like your outfit." And she was like, "Oh my God." And then she like completely relaxed, right? And then
That's
like
hilarious.
right, and she completely relaxed, the whole thing of like the whole vibe changed,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Right.
But like it kind of makes me think about like because I like that's so real. I feel like also I've had a similar moment where white people get really freaked out because I'm a fast walker and I'm Black, and so they think I'm like coming up on them when honestly I'm just late.
Right. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I don't even know what there is to do about this because this feels like a signaling thing in some ways, but also a community thing, right? Like we don't have like the baseline psychological safety in order for women to be walking along the street and have like a like someone who presents as male behind them and for them to not actively be freaked out about it or like not actively
Seriously. Yeah.
be keeping tabs on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say. The first time it happened to me, I actually laughed out loud. Like I was on the escalator and there was a lady who was going to the escalator. I also was going to the escalator. She got on, she looked at me and she like her tightest wrap on her purse and
Mm.
and I just cackled. I just cackled because like, why did you get on the escalator, girl?
I'm sure that freaked her out. She's like gripping her purse, and you're like, lol. Like, girl, I ain't even here for you. Calm down. Right.
And
But I
it's
also
also
think that there's a difference between like keeping tabs on a thing and like that active kind of like protective
It's
gesture, right?
it's
Like
so
that is.
complex because it's like a mixture of a bunch of things. You don't know if it's like, is it because of how I present? Is it because of like my race? Is it because of like my tattoos? Is it because of like there's just so many different things happening. And while at one point it's not fair, there's also like this idea of you understanding why it's happening, because there are so many situations that women have been in where they were unsafe because a man was behind them. It's just like an outgrowth of the isms. That's what it
Yeah.
is.
This feels like one of those moments in which in our podcast, we provide more questions than answers, right? Like this feels
Yeah,
like just like a big, this
basically.
is like a big question. Like I don't have an answer for it. Like, but like
Yeah,
here it is.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like what I was thinking about also was like, when you were like, is it because of how you present your tattoos, like what you're wearing, all these things? It's like, what kind of degenerate do you think I am? Right. Or
Right.
like what kind of myth or stereotype are you reacting to?
Stereotype. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel
Exactly.
like this plays really well into like the last thing that we wanted to talk about, which is like
Mhm.
intersection, and intersectionality. So, as someone who's transitioned, how does intersectionality play out? Oh yeah, we did talk about this, like the
Yeah, we
tax to
kind of,
pay. We totally
yeah,
did.
have touched on it a little bit
Okay.
already.
Yeah. So maybe this is just about like speaking directly to intersectionality and like intersectionality, that thing that Kimberly Crenshaw coined. Yeah,
Mhm.
would you like to say a little bit about intersectionality? Because I know you have something to say about intersectionality.
Well, I don't, but I can.
Sorry for putting you on the spot, dude.
No worries. That's what editing is for. So
Oh,
we're probably, no, I'm just playing. No, but for some people who don't probably know what intersectionality is, we will go ahead and, share that definition with you. So now I gotta find it because I had it somewhere and I don't know where it's at, but give me a second. But it is important and it's a term that everybody should know and be conscious of, because all of us are impacted by it, whether we know it or not. Okay, just had it and it went away again. So I want to define it fully and not give my paraphrased version of the definition. But intersectionality, or some people refer to it as intersectional theory, is a term that was first coined by Kimberly Crenshaw in 1989. And basically, it's just the study of overlapping or intersecting social identities and related systems of oppression, domination, or discrimination. And we know that socialization really is what plays the biggest part in intersectionality. So if I am Black, but also a woman, those two identities intersect to create an experience that I'm going to have, which would be different than someone who was Black and then, a man. And so, yeah, Vasquez, if you want to share anything with us just about like how you've identified the way that your intersecting identities have influenced the experience you have, which might be different than someone who, for example, would be passing now as maybe like a cis woman of trans experience.
yeah, I think there is just it's a different. I feel, and this is a conversation I've had actually with a lot of my FTM and NTFs, um, is that when you transition almost from being perceived as female to being perceived as male, is that you almost are opening doors,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like you're stepping into another class. And I
Mhm.
think when you transition from being female, perceived as female to be perceived, sorry, from being perceived as male to being perceived as female, you tend to close a lot of doors,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right? Because women and femininity is still a second class or a second tier in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And so oftentimes I hear a lot of struggles that are from my trans women um, counterparts about how they're being treated, and I was like, well, there's a possibility that you're not being treated as a trans woman, but you're being treated as a woman.
A woman, right?
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah.
And I'm like, because I remember that.
Yeah.
Because I
Right.
hear what you're
Yeah.
saying, and but there's a really hard nuances because it all would come back to the perspective of the person,
Yeah.
on the other
True.
side of it.
Yeah.
Um, but there's definitely a lot of doors like people. What I have found is that, and I've got to experience my current body in a couple different ways, and by that I mean I lived in Colorado, which was homogenized,
Yes.
mostly white.
Yep.
And there's not a lot of Puerto Ricans, so there's not a lot of reference from Puerto Ricans. So I was
Mm,
oftentimes regarded to and spoken to as a white male,
mm,
right? And then coming
Wild.
back to Chicago, yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm,
completely wild. And not by my choosing whatsoever,
Totally. Totally.
yeah.
you know? And so, and then to come back to Chicago, where people know you're Puerto Rican, and then to try and figure out, well, do they perceive me as Puerto Rican or do they perceive me as white?
Mm-hmm.
And like, what does that mean? And although
Right.
I am Puerto Rican, I am also white passing.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And so, like, taking that in, um, there's been a lot of learning.
Yeah. I can
There's been
Yeah.
a lot of learning.
Can you tell us a little bit about the differences between like when people like the differences in how people treat you or respond to you when they perceive you as a white dude versus perceiving you as like a Puerto Rican dude or like as a trans person? I feel like also these things are hard to like parse too, because like a lot of it is a vibe.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and then part of it is just also me stereotyping what they mean as well.
mm,
Like, am I also, do they think I'm just a thug, or do they think I'm a thug because they think I'm Puerto Rican and Puerto
mm.
Ricans are thugs?
That's deep.
You know what?
Mhm.
Is it the tattoos, or is it, you know, is it the tattoos, or the gold? Is it the thing on the
What kind of
tooth?
delinquent do you think I am? Yes,
Yeah,
that you are
exactly. What
responding to.
flavor?
Yeah, what
What
flavor? What
flavor of it?
flavor?
What flavor is this? Or, and it happens quite frequently when I'm dealing with people of color, where they think I'm white, and so they think I'm speaking to them from a racist perspective, and it's like, no. And it happened at Apple a lot when I had to charge people, well, you're being racist, and it's like, well, no, that's just the rule, but I'm also not white, and my
Yeah.
daddy's darker than you are, and
Yeah. Yeah.
so there's a lot of, you know there had to be a lot of growing up for me, because my father, he was my mother and my father are both from Puerto Rico. My mother is definitely the one with the Spanish blood, very
Mm-hmm.
light skin, and my father is the opposite, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, but I was raised by my father as a person of color.
Mm-hmm.
And then for me to get into a place like Denver, where I wasn't acknowledged, it was really frustrating
Yeah.
to have to, like, fight. Like, not only do I have to fight for this, but I have to fight for, it's just something else. It's just something
Yeah.
else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then I come back to Chicago, and people, you know, it's a code switching too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
People talk to you differently when they think you're white.
Yep.
Yeah. Very true. Very true.
Yeah. I also feel like they talk to you different if you like sound white, whatever that means.
Yep. That too.
Hmm.
Yep.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I get misgendered over the phone as well. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, if they think you're a woman versus, and I've experienced discrimination in so many lights that I shouldn't be owning, but because I'm so adjacent to it,
Mm.
I just get kind of lumped in it.
Yeah, yeah.
That's like a
Um,
whole topic, adjacent discrimination.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I feel like one of the things that we've been talking about is like the politics of passing, right? Or the
Hmm.
optics of passing, and how like there's a difference between like passing up and passing down
Yeah.
socially, right? And how differently that places you depending on where you are, and then how you're open to a different kind of othering once you've gotten there, right?
Mm.
So it's like you've transitioned from like female to male, and now like as a dude, you're like having to face the politics of like what it is to be uh like a Puerto Rican dude or like a white dude or like
Mhm.
a cis dude. Um and that yeah.
And so I have one of the things that has been coming to light recently, as we look at like, political actions and agendas, especially like in regards to like the trans community, but then also just around like banning books and critical race theory and all the things and the, um, women's reproductive rights, um, is there's this narrative now that individuals who are in the Latinx community, many may identify as white, and how in some ways Republicans may be even trying to appeal, what I mean, to this demographic of individuals, because then that would, if we're just looking at numbers, significantly increase the white population, which then can influence political, yeah,
Gerrymandering.
exactly. So
Yes.
I'm curious for you as someone who is Puerto Rican, and I've heard you say multiple times, um, that you're white passing, in conversations with other individuals, who are also like, is that like those are not mutually exclusive, right? Or are they? Like, there are individuals who may I consider themselves white that are Puerto Rican. Is that right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
So
I don't
you
like to
choose
talk about
not
them, but they
to.
out there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you choose not
Colonialism.
to, right? Because but you have like, but that's a conscious choice that you're making, because there's a large group of individuals who don't make that decision, right? They
Yeah,
identify
because
as white.
yeah, and Puerto Rico and Puerto Rico is difficult, right? Because the Puerto Ricans are our backgrounds are indigenous, black, and
Right?
Spanish,
Yes.
right? And so we're a product of colonization,
Yeah.
essentially, because
And imperialism.
and
Hmm.
imperialism, and so and we are still a colony
Yes.
for the
Uh
United States, and so like because we don't need a passport to travel back and forth from the U.S. There are certain Puerto Ricans that find themselves to be above other Latinxes and
Mm,
to socialize as being white. But as we saw when Trump came down to visit with Hurricane Maria and tossed us the paper towels, that he
that's
didn't
right.
even realize that he was the president of Puerto Rico. He thought he was going there to visit the president of Puerto Rico. So the
um
disconnect there
Yep,
yeah.
is
yep.
so far from considering us
Crazy.
white that even our own white president doesn't consider us to be white.
Yep,
So why
yep,
would I consider myself to be white?
yeah,
Furthermore, why would I
Ooh, shit. Sorry.
hit him with the
yeah.
furthermore?
Yes, do. Please.
Right.
Furthermore, I would never. Why would I shit on my ancestors? That doesn't make any sense, right?
You know what
Because
happens when you
60,
upset the dead?
you know what I mean? And so,
Mm.
like, I was already told the myth that Tainos died hundreds and hundreds of years ago, but that's crazy because I have like 20% Taino in me.
Yeah.
Mhm. Right? Right?
And so like
Wow.
if I want to eradicate the Taino bloodline, if I want to eradicate the indigeneity that comes along with being Puerto Rican, then yes, I guess I'm white.
Hmm.
But it's not, it's an oversimplification of just because again, race is a construct.
Yeah. And
I was
also
waiting for
don't let
somebody to say it. Go ahead.
yeah, and like don't let Christopher Columbus off that easy.
Right.
Right.
Fuck
You
that
know what
dude.
I mean? And so like there is I'd be darker if it wasn't for the Spanish. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and Puerto Ricans have been treated like property ever since. And so
Mhm.
there is
Yeah.
a misunderstand. We have been sold, and this is where the I consider myself independent or independista, which means
Mhm.
I'm for the sovereignty of Puerto Rico.
Yeah. Sorry. Into this.
Yeah, and so they have sold us this lie that we are unable to self-determine, right?
Which isn't fucking true. Yeah,
It's not
absolutely.
true, but they've made it that way because of the fact that here's a simple example. I think 80% of the produce that comes into Puerto Rico is filtered in through Walmart,
Mm. Wow.
Um,
right? And so Walmart has a really big stake in having the Puerto Ricans live off of SNAP or EBT.
yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? And so
And
like this is an island. We were self-sustaining before you got there. We were
yeah,
just
Right.
yeah,
fine.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so now you
yeah,
sold us the lie that we can only survive on US assistance.
yeah.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
go ahead. Sorry.
Wow.
No, please
So
don't
much to
apologize.
unpack.
Like all of this is so like it's so good and so important. I have a shameless plug for How to Hide an Empire by Daniel Immerwahr,
Mm.
which I read recently, and a lot, and it talks about like the differences between the logo map of the United States and versus like our colonies, Philippines, Puerto Rico, Guam, and Alaska and Hawaii, and about like all of the shit that happened in Puerto Rico as and like the things that like the average American doesn't know because we don't consider Puerto Rico as a part of America, even though you are and you're like not only is Puerto Rico a part of the United States, but like it was critical to the founding of the United States.
Right.
Like there's a dude, I forget his name, but uh a famous award is named after him, and he got his start like involuntarily doing like birth control testing on the Puerto Rican female population without their consent,
Mm.
because
Sterilization.
it
Yeah.
was yeah because it was an island. It was made poor, right? It wasn't like that. It was made poor, and then there was an overpopulation issue, and so they were like, let's just, and like there were so many things that became available in the continental United States because it was tested as an experiment without any structure, without any oversight at all in Puerto Rico.
Wow.
Yeah. 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 There's it, and the outright use of it wasn't too long ago that Vieques, one of our islands, was demilitarized.
Yeah.
You know what I
The
mean?
other thing is that the United States is using the Puerto Rico and a lot of the islands in the Pacific as military bases and as like espionage sites.
Mm.
Yeah, and that sterilization stuff happened in the late 1940s, 47
Yeah.
to 48. So
Yeah.
this is not so
It's
far
not
away.
no, and it's not ancient history at all. And like all of, and I think we do a disservice to history by thinking of anything prior to like 19, and the marker moves, right? But anything prior to 1980 is like history. But like all like the 1940s were on our grandparents' generation, easy,
Right. Yeah.
right? Sometimes our
That's
parents'
right.
generation.
Uh-huh.
My parents, my mother was born in 51, and my father was born in 50s in 50. So there's
Yeah.
it was within their time frame where the U.S. had imposed a law that where we couldn't wave our flag, sing our song,
Yes.
or we'd
Yes.
be imprisoned.
Yeah.
The
There's
playbook.
so
They,
much.
they
Yeah.
changed the color of our flag too. So if you notice that the Puerto Rican flag currently, the color scheme matches the U.S.
America.
flag.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's true.
but it's supposed to be a lighter color because the blue is supposed to represent the crystal blue waters,
Mm.
and they changed it to be more American. So like, there's just so many things that the U.S. has actively done to there's a huge law happening. I think it's law 22 or something like that that gives billionaires tax big, huge tax credits for purchasing Puerto Rican land, which is why Jake Paul has like a however $1 million campus there, and all these people they're basically Airbnb Puerto Ricans out of Puerto Rico. We can't afford to live there.
Yeah.
Because the average income is something in the 30s or something like that. Like,
yeah,
that's like a similar thing is happening to Native Hawaiians on their land too. It's that it's being bought up for like corporate use, and then Native Hawaiians are getting priced out of their homes and their land, their ancestral land.
Yeah, ancestral land too, and they wiped away our indigeneity.
Right
now, they tried to take away our language. They tried to take away our, literally by law. And so, and this is happening currently. This is
actively. Yeah,
this is actively happening. We actively, and so it's getting really bad, and so there's a huge push right now from certain senators to kind of like help decolonize that, and kind of set up the people for self-determination. Anyways, we completely got off track.
I mean, yeah, we did, but I think it's important because I think like it's surprising how many people don't know about Puerto Rico. I mean, like I read that book, and then I hit up my Puerto Rican friend and was like, and he was like, yeah, and I was like, oh my God. So I'm glad that we got to like lay it out, because I think a lot of this is connected, right? Like especially in terms of like intersections,
right?
Like these are all things that lead into the tapestry, lead into like the many different kinds of discrimination we face, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep, agreed, fully agreed. And thank you for sharing that, and just bringing the fullness of all of your identity markers into this conversation, and giving us a deeper understanding of just how it's ongoing, it's continual, it's not in the past, it's right now. And we all have a responsibility in being aware of what's happening around us. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
So this conversation has been so, just enlightening, fulfilling. I don't know.
One hell of a great first episode, I will say so myself.
This is really
so thank you for that.
This is really setting the tone for where we're wanting to go with this podcast. So we thank you. We have so much gratitude for you.
Yeah, a ton.
Of course. Let me know when y'all want to do this again.
For sure. But there's so much to talk to you about. So
yeah, absolutely.
One last question, and this may or may not make it. Depends on how you all feel about it. But curious, what would you call this episode if you had to give it a name? And this is for either one of you.
Looks at my notes.
Yeah. I don't know. We went through so many stuff.
We covered a lot of ground here. Part of me wants to call it like the politics of passing.
Okay.
As a way of thinking about like transition and like racial, but I also feel like that leaves out redemptive relationships and Diddy.
Hilarious too.
Sorry, I'll be here all week. Part of me also wants to call it something like because
redemptive intersectionality.
Oh,
now that's listen, you were joking, but you were not playing around,
right?
Oh shit!
Yeah, redemptive intersection. Oh shit!
Ooh,
that's it.
That's deep.
That's it. Because I was also thinking about like the the takeaway, the food for thought, and
the food for thought. Yeah,
and
we're gonna leave.
Yeah, and I feel like the question I was going to ask was about the tax to pay. Right? Because I think that's like a good center for this, is like, what space are you in?
Ooh, I like that.
Like thanks.
I don't even know where you go, but I like it already.
Okay. It's like, the space that you're in, and like interrogating the space that you're in, and thinking about your intersections and your privilege, to think about who you can humanize, who's not there.
Love it. I love it.
And so I feel like redemptive intersections goes along with that quite well.
It does. Ooh, that's so perfect. I love
Sorry.
it.
Or you can do that's a good one. You could do something like taxes due or something like that.
Oh, yeah, pay the tax.
Like that.
Yeah.
I wanted to incorporate the word tax somewhere.
Tax.
I just didn't know how to do it.
Yeah, I like
So I like that too.
what if it's like something like pay the tax colon redemptive intersections?
Ooh. So we're incorporating both.
Yeah. Is that too much?
Paying
I
the
do too.
tax for redemptive.
Paying the tax for redemptive.
So we could do like the tax as like the big headline, and then like we have this small little
it's like a book title.
subtitle that explain, goes into a little bit more detail about redemptive, intersectionality.
Yeah.
Like
Exploring redemptive intersectionality. Because I feel like that's like
taxes.
By paying your taxes. Because I feel like that speaks. Yeah, you got to pay the tax. Because I think that speaks to like a lot of what we were talking about, which was community at the end of the day.
That's right. My only fear with the tax, now that I'm thinking about it, is will people assume this is an episode about taxes?
Well, I think if we
money, and then they're like, oh no.
I think if we, that's why I'm like, if we add something about redemptive relationships or like exploring redemptive relationships or exploring redemptive intersections, then paying the tax becomes contextualized.
I agree. So now I'm thinking we flip it. So we do the redemptive intersectionality.
Oh, redemptive paying
and
the
then
tax.
The tax to the tax we pay for, etc. So
the tax we pay for existing in spaces or like
something like that, right? So that way we're not, because if I see taxes, I'm like, nope.
I'm gonna think like fuck you, government.
Yeah. I want to stay far away from understanding anything about